Assalamu alaikum, first year morning and first year evening. This is your course in charge Hirafsha. Today I am here with the new topic, digestive system, and our object is to study the different parts of the digestive system of the human body. So we are going to start it with another system, that is the digestive system of the body. So here is the components of the digestive system. You can see in this diagram there is a mouth, tongue. These are the salivary glands, parotid glands, sublingual glands, submandibular glands. These are the glands which are present in the oral cavity, and then the pharynx, and then it will lead to the esophagus, and then esophagus leads to the stomach, and then the small intestine, large intestine, gallbladder, liver, pancreas, and there are different parts of the small intestine: duodenum, jejunum, ileum, and the large intestine has colon, also known as colon, which has transverse colon, ascending colon, descending colon, and then the cecum, and the last part is the sigmoid colon. Or then you can see the rectum, which is also the part of the large intestine, and then the anal canal, and finally the anus. So this is the whole diagram of the digestive system of the human body, and now I am going to discuss it in detail. So basically, what is the function of the digestive system? The function of the digestive system is to break down the food which you eat and then release its nutrients and then absorb these nutrients in the body. The digestive system helps to absorb these nutrients which you take from food or other sources, and the small intestine is the main organ of the system where the majority of digestion or absorption takes place, and it is the place where the nutrients are released and absorbed, and these nutrients are released into the bloodstream or the lymph, and then so each of the digestive system organ plays a vital role or contribution in the whole process. So there is the regional classification of the abdomen. We have classified the abdomen and the pelvic region into several major regions. This is the right hypochondriac region. Then this is the central region is epigastric region, and then the left is left hypochondriac region. Then here comes the middle. Middle is the umbilical region. This is the right lumbar region, and this is the left lumbar region. And then comes to the iliac region, which is located near the iliac bone, and this is the right iliac region. In the center, hypogastric region, and then the left is the left iliac region. So this is the abdominopelvic regional classification, and this part is the diaphragm. And here you can see the four quadrants: right upper quadrant, left upper quadrant, right lower quadrant, left lower quadrant. So this is basically the regional classification of the whole abdomen. Now comes to the classification of the digestive system. The digestive system is divided into two main categories: alimentary canal and the accessory digestive tract organs. So the first group of organ is the alimentary canal, and the other is the accessory digestive tract. And this group of organs are responsible for the synthesis and secretion of the enzymes which facilitate the chemical digestion. We will discuss it in further details in our next slides. So what is alimentary canal? The alimentary canal, also known as the GI tract or the gastrointestinal tract or gut, and aliment means to nourish, and it is the one-way tube structure, and its main function is to nourish the body from the nutrients which you take with the help of the food or other sources. And this tube begins from the mouth and it terminates at the anus, and between these 2 points the canal is modified as the pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine to fit the functional needs of the body. I have already described you from the diagram in my first slide. Here you can see this, the alimentary canal begins with the mouth and it ends at the anus, and between these two structure there is a pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine and the large intestine. So this is the together these organs are known as the alimentary canal. Now comes to the accessory digestive organ. The accessory digestive organ aids in the breakdown of food with the help of the secretion of the enzymes which help in the chemical digestion. So within the mouth there are teeth and tongue which begin the mechanical digestion, whereas the salivary glands which are responsible for the chemical digestion. Once the food products enter into the small intestine, the gallbladder and the liver and the pancreas, they all release secretions such as bile and enzymes which are essential for the digestion to continue. So together these organs are known as the accessory organs. I have told you that there is a salivary gland in the oral cavity and there are teeth and tongue, and these organs make up the accessory digestive organs. Gallbladder, pancreas, liver, etc. The small intestine is the part of the alimentary canal, not the accessory digestive tract. Now comes to the histology of the alimentary canal. The alimentary canal is composed of the 4 tissue layers. These 4 tissue layers are present almost in all organs of the alimentary canal, and starting from the lumen and moving outwards, these layers are the mucosa, second is the submucosa, third is the muscularis, and fourth is the serosa, which is continuous with the mesentery. Here you can see the layers of the alimentary canal. Mucosa here, which also has epithelium, lamina propria and muscularis mucosa, and then the submucosa here. Then you can see the muscularis over here, which has circular muscle and the longitudinal muscle in the muscularis layer, and then the serosa, which has areolar connective tissue and epithelium, and this is continue with the mesenteric plexus. These are the nerves. This is the mesentery and this is the artery, and these are the nerves. The mucosa, which is the first layer, is referred to as the mucous membrane because of the mucus production of the gut epithelium. And the membrane, this membrane consists of the epithelium, which is in direct contact with the ingested food, and the lamina propria, which is a layer of the connective tissue and analogous to the dermis. and then the submucosa, which lies immediately beneath the mucosa, and this is the broad layer of dense connective tissue, and it connects the overlying mucosa to the underlying muscularis. Basically, it connects the mucosa to the muscularis, and it includes the blood and the lymphatic vessels, which transport the absorbed nutrients, and scattering of submucosal glands that release the digestive secretions. Here you can see the mucosa consists of the epithelium, lamina propria, muscularis, mucosa, and then the submucosa over here, which has dense connective tissue and the submucosal glands here, glands in mucosa. Now the third layer of the alimentary canal is the muscularis, which is also known as the muscularis externa, and the muscularis in the small intestine is made up of the double layer of smooth muscles, the inner circular layer, and the outer is the longitudinal layer. In case of the small intestine, there are two or the double layer of the smooth muscle. The inner one is the inner circular layer, and the outer one is the outer longitudinal layer. The contraction of these layers promote the mechanical digestion, expose more of the food to the digestive chemicals, and move the food along the canal. And the stomach is equipped for its kerning function by the addition of a third layer. The stomach has three layers. The third layer is oblique muscle. The first is inner circular layer, second is outer longitudinal layer, and third is oblique muscle. While the colon has two layers, same like the small intestine. The fourth one is the serosa. Serosa is the portion of the alimentary canal superficial to the muscularis, present only in the regions of the alimentary canal within the abdominal cavity. And the serosa consists of a layer of visceral peritoneum overlying a layer of loose connective tissue. And instead of the serosa, the mouth, pharynx, and esophagus have a dense sheath of collagen fibers, and here they are known as the adventitia. In case of mouth, pharynx, and esophagus, this serosa is known as adventitia, and these tissues serve to hold the alimentary canal in place near the ventral surface of the vertebral column. Here you can see the serosa, which consists of the areolar connective tissue and epithelium. And in case of mouth and pharynx or esophagus, it is known as the adventitia. Now comes to the organs of the digestive system. Number one is the buccal cavity. Buccal cavity marks the opening of the digestive tract, and it is made by the oral vestibule, which is the space between the inner cheeks and the teeth, and the oral cavity proper, which is behind the teeth. And the buccal cavity also contains the teeth and the tongue, and it is limited anteriorly by the lips and teeth, and posterolaterally by the palate and the pharynx, and posteriorly the buccal cavity opens into the oropharynx. So posterior to the oral cavity proper is the oropharynx, and this is the middle part of the pharynx that communicates superiorly with the nasopharynx and inferiorly with the laryngopharynx. Oropharynx is the middle part of the pharynx, which connects to the nasopharynx superiorly, and inferiorly it connects to the laryngopharynx. And the walls of the oropharynx are formed by the superior and middle pharyngeal constrictor muscles. Next is the esophagus. Esophagus is a muscular tube which is responsible for transferring food from the oropharynx to the stomach, and it is divided into three parts: cervical, thoracic, and abdominal components. The total length of this muscular tube is 25 cm, commencing at the circopharyngeus at the lower border of the cercoid cartilage at the 6th cervical vertebrae. Here you can see the pharynx connected to the esophagus, and this is the tube, which is 25 centimeter long, and it starts at the circumpharyngeal area at the lower border of the cercoid cartilage at the 6 cervical vertebrae. Now comes to the stomach. The stomach, within the abdominal cavity, the esophagus enters the stomach, and this is the dilated area of the alimentary canal that participates in both mechanical as well as chemical digestion. It is divided into 4 main parts, namely the fundus, body, antrum, pylorus. Here you can see the fundus, body, antrum, and pylorus. Laterally there is a greater curvature, and medially there is a lesser curvature, and there are 2 distinct notches on the stomach. The first is the cardiac incisura. Here this notch is the cardia or cardiac incisura, formed at the lateral border of the cardio-esophageal junction, and the other is the less pronounced incisura angularis, found distally at the posterior end of the lesser curvature or the pyloric antrum. Here you can see it. This is the medially there is a lesser curvature, and there is a greater curvature laterally. Laterally is a greater curvature, medially is a lesser curvature. Here you can see the fundus. This is the longitudinal layer, circular layer or middle layer, and the oblique layer, which I have told you that serosa has 3 layers in the stomach. And then the body. Here is the gastric folds. Here is the pylorus. This is the notch, cardia. Here you can see posteriorly the incisura angularis, second notch at the pyloric antrum of the stomach. Now comes to the duodenum. Duodenum marks the beginning of the small intestine, which is duodenum is the part of the small intestine, and it is the initial part of the small intestine, and it roughly is 20 to 25 centimeter long. It extends from the pylorus to the ligament of Treitz. Not only is the duodenum the shortest part of the small intestine, but it is also the widest part of the small intestine. This duodenum can be subdivided into 4 parts based on its geometrical orientation. The first part is known as the pars superioris. That is the superior part, that is roughly 2 to 3 centimeter long, and it travels above the head of the pancreas. And the second part is the pars descendens, and which commences behind the neck of the gallbladder, and it travels about 8 to 10 centimeter lateral to the head of the pancreas. Here you can see this is the ligament of Treitz, and the duodenum starts from the pylorus and ends at the ligament of Treitz over here. Then the inferior duodenal flexure, where the pars descendens begins to turn, marks the transition of the second part of the duodenum to the third part, which is known as the pars horizontalis. It travels roughly 10 centimeter before it begins to the curve upwards into the final segment of the duodenum, that is known as the pars ascendens, which is only 2.5 centimeters. So geometrically, duodenum has 4 parts: pars superioris, pars descendens, pars horizontalis, and the pars ascendens. These are the 4 parts of the duodenum. Here you can see the duodenum, then other parts of the small intestine, and then the large intestine in this diagram. And here you can see it. This is the pars superior of the duodenum, then pars descendens, this purple part, and this is the pars inferior, and then this is the curved part that is known as the pars ascendens. Now comes to the jejunum and ileum, which are also the part of the small intestine, and the transition from the duodenum to jejunum occurs at the ligaments of the tracheids, where the duodenum ends and the jejunum begins. The difference in the luminal diameter of the jejunum and duodenum is an important distinguishing feature. There is a difference between the luminal diameter of these two, that is the jejunum and the duodenum. The duodenum is slightly wider as compared to the jejunum. And then comes to the ileum. The ileum is the final segment of the small intestine. There is a difference between the ileum and jejunum. The walls of the jejunum are thicker as compared to the ileum, and the external diameter of the jejunum, which is about 4 centimeter, is greater than that of the ileum, which is about 3.5 centimeter, and the internal diameter of ileum, which is 2 centimeter, is also smaller than that of the jejunum, which is 2.5 centimeters. So the external diameter of jejunum and the internal diameter of jejunum is greater as compared to the external and internal diameter of ileum. So the ileum terminates at the ileocecal valve, which marks the transition from the small intestine to the large intestine. At the ileocecal valve, the ileum ends and the small intestine will change into the large intestine over this point. The ileocecal valve is one-way structure that prevents the reflux of the bolus or food from the large intestine into the small intestine. Here you can see this is the duodenum, this is the jejunum, this is the ileum. These are the parts of the small intestine. You can see over here stomach, from the pylorus the duodenum starts, and then the duodenojejunal flexure, and then the jejunum starts, and then the ileum starts, and then ileum terminates at the ileocecal junction. So these are the parts of the small intestine. Now comes to the large intestine, and it is also known as colon. The proximal end of the large intestine, also known as the colon, and it is formed by a dilated tube or pouch which closed at one end. This end is known as the cecum, and there is only a vermiform appendix that is attached at the variable parts of the cecum. Colon is divided into ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, and sigmoid colon. Externally, the colon has a segmented appearance due to the haustration, and the haustrations are so the colon has segmented appearance due to the haustrations that are present on the luminal surface of the tube. The haustrations or haustra of the colon are the small pouches which occurs due to the sac formation, and it gives the colon a segmented appearance. And the muscular layer of the colon are concentrated into three muscular bands, which are known as the tinea coli and which travels along the length of the colon. Here you can see the parts of the large intestine: ascending colon, this is the cecum, then the ascending colon, then the transverse colon, this is the descending colon, and then the sigmoid colon. And these segmented parts are known as the rostrations, and this is the appendix which is attached to it. Now comes to the rectum, which is also the part of the large intestine. Here you can see after the sigmoid colon there is a rectum over here. So the rectum is circumferentially walled by the smooth muscles, and it does not have rostrations or any segmented appearance, and it is devoid of the tinea coli or the muscular tissues. And this distal continuation of the large intestine function of a reservoir functions as a reservoir for stool and prior to excretion. The large intestine basically serves a reservoir for stool prior to excretion, and it terminates at the level of the sacrococcygeal curvature. It passes over the pelvic diaphragm to form the anorectal junction. Here you can see it. This is the rectum. Now comes to the anal canal. The final passageway through which the undigested food and the exfoliated mucosa will exit the body is called the anal canal, and it continues from the anorectal junction and passes through the loop formed by the puborectalis muscle, which swings the anal canal anteriorly. Distally, the mucosa of the anal canal transitions from the columnar epithelium with the globulate cells found throughout the colon to the squamous epithelium of the perineal skin. This point is referred to as the anal verge.